Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Chris McQuarrie's Mission Impossible Fallout. So, I went to see Mission Impossible 6 yesterday, and I was massively hyped for this film, as you would have known. If you've seen my reviews, because I have been reviewing, of course, all of Mission Impossible, all 5 of them films, and in order. And of course, we'll do a ranking, probably in a few days now, because I'm pretty much sure I have my ranking now. Yes. Now, Mission Impossible Fallout, of course, I went to see it yesterday, and I was so much looking forward to this film. The hype surrounding this film is something else. One of the biggest events in the last few years, really. And returning, of course, as a writer and director, and one of the producers, Chris McQuarrie, of course, he wrote and directed Rogue Nation, and I absolutely loved that film. See how high that is on my ranking as well. And I think that in many ways that was the best of Mission Impossible. But find out where that is on the ranking when I do it. And yes, this film was built up so much. It was praised so much. Many calling it really one of the greatest action films of all time. One of the best of the 2010s. It's by critics and fans. Just basically saying most people saying it's the best Mission Impossible by far. Of course, some saying it's one of the best, but no one really saying it's disappointing. And people praising just everything involved in this film, and saying it's just like a landmark, action film, one of the best or the best since Mad Max Fury Road. And I absolutely loved Mad Max. I don't think Mad Max is quite one of the absolute greatest of all time action films, but so Mission Impossible, did it live up to the hype? Did it deliver? And did it become, the greatest Mission Impossible film? I think Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol, they made it into my 100% plus tiers. I think they are absolute masterpieces. I also think the first is a masterpiece. Very, very different, of course. And, that was the one where it was much more spy espionage kind of stuff. Very much a thriller more than an action. And the rest of them really less so free again, but rest of them really, Tom Cruise is an action hero, and I like my action heroes. Let me tell you, when they're great. James Bond, The Bride, of course, from Kill Bill. So many different heroes in cinema, action heroes. Best of all, Indiana Jones. So really, I generally do prefer the kind of direction they took. I wasn't a big fan of 3, but really for the rest of them, I do love. And yes, I was really hoping that this would at least be up there with the best. And yeah, spoilers, it's the best by far. I agree with a lot of the statements, I think. And who cares if it ruins my ranking? You now know. This is the best Mission Impossible film for me. And, the first 45 minutes, I was thinking, yes, it's probably the best. It's certainly right up there with the best. Rogue Nation, Ghost Protocol. There's maybe a couple of things I was thinking. Hopefully they bring in this that was in 4 and 5. The more of the teamwork kind of thing going on and stuff like that. And hopefully the big set pieces and all that kind of stuff and the way they just balance out all the characters and everything amongst all the action. The first 45 minutes was absolutely stunning. One of the best hand-to-hands in cinema. Right up there with the best sort of Bruce Lee stuff and all that kind of things. And the raid too and stuff like that. The bathroom fight scene, of course, you know what it is. And it was building this really, really interesting story. Basically this time around, Ethan Hunt and company, they're sent to kind of to catch these, to get these plutonium cores, these free ones, to stop what the Syndicate was in Rogue Nation, is now called the Apostles, and yes, basically they have to track these down and stop them from getting sold, and there's nuclear bombs going off, and of course the Apostles, this massive terrorist group. Solomon Lane is back in the film, played by Sean Harris. So it's kind of like a sequel, and also obviously something very, very different. But yes, no, it kind of is a sequel to Rogue Nation. A lot of I don't know how they're going to do it from now on. What they're going to do, if this is kind of like a Spectre thing, where they kind of bring it all together kind of thing into this universe. I'm not sure, but basically, it was very clear from this and Rogue Nation that the continuity is complete, in that sense, and all the characters and everything, all the relationships are all completely carried through and developed. But yes, the plot was just really, really great, the way it was told, the story. And yes, as I was saying, the first 45 minutes was absolutely stunning. It was flawless, this is what I was thinking. It probably could be better. Maybe not quite the jump that people were saying. Really, after that 45 minutes, it got better and better and better. And the second half, completely, I was thinking this is the greatest Mission Impossible film. It just got better and better, and it was absolutely stunning film. Really knocked them out of the park, and that was something. I was thinking before going into this. I don't always agree with what everyone says in terms of the best of whatever of director of a franchise. So I'm not going to automatically think it's going to be the best. It'd be really hard to top them two, 4 and 5. But really, certainly that second half, all the way through, I was thinking, wow, this, it's far and away the best, and it just keeps topping itself. The ending sort of 30 minutes is some of the best stuff I've seen, certainly of the 2010s, and probably the century actually as well. It's absolutely stunning. I think that the things that this does, it's just all the characters, even Luther, who I absolutely loved, he's one of my favourite things about Mission Impossible up until this film. They actually made him even better. They developed his character so well. It's just really, really something. All the characters, they made even more human than they were. I think what they tried to do with 3, they said they tried to make it more human. I think it, failed on quite a lot of levels. It was more melodramatic than anything, in a bad way. And just really just blanded Tom Cruise's character for Ethan Hunt. That can sometimes happen. He's always been enjoyable, and all the Mission Impossibles. Less so 3. I think he was fine, but nothing more really, and that was just because of the direction they took. In this is what they should have been thinking of how to approach it in terms of bringing humanity. Because wow, this is something else. It's the most emotional Mission Impossible. First of all, it's operatic, it's tragic, it's all these sort of things as well. And this character of Ethan Hunt is now, certainly in this one, he was kind of in Rogue Nation, I guess it's probably just Chris McQuarrie, how he's handling it. In Rogue Nation he was very, very different and just much more of a human character. But in this, they amp it up even more, and what an emotional film this is, It's just something else, and I think, from the very opening, this is just perfection, cinematic perfection, and the action. As I said, the hand-to-hands are stunning. It's got some of the best fight choreography I've ever seen, and the actual, big action set pieces, they are something. They are mind-blowing. They keep topping themselves, and far and away the best Mission Impossible sequence is the last 30 minutes of the film. The helicopter stuff and all that. Wow, the way that Chris McQuarrie balances out the drama, the kind of tragedy of it all, the scope, the scale, the action itself, the way it's been edited, the tension, when you've got that thing going off on in the background, and then the little sub, kind of things going on, something else, and then just coming in a climax that is very unexpected, but also inevitable, kind of thing, that great sort of feeling, and just amazing ending, really, really something. And even the credits, once again, are epic. But this film, what it does really is it brings a level of sophistication that's even higher than Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol. The way it approaches the storytelling, the actual plot, this threat is very much like it's actually happening. I got so invested in it, in the actual and you've seen this kind of plot many, many times of nuclear takeover and stuff. Of course, and I don't usually care too much for a plot. It doesn't really affect my overall enjoyment of a film, and I never usually say a film's one of the best of all time because of its plot. It's not usually about that for me. But when a film has got a plot like this, but it's told in such a way, then that's something. The way that I was able to kind of feel this threat, just even from when you first see the plutonium cores. It's to do with the cinematography and everything as well. It's just stunning. there's a sense of dread and atmosphere throughout the first hour, really. Like you sense that something bad is going to happen, kind of thing. The foreshadowing and all that sort of stuff. Something else, the cinematography, you know, wonderful. Far and away the best of the franchise. And despite my awful screening that I was in, we'll quickly talk about that. Once again, the cinemas are dulled down. You can barely see what really is the film in terms of the, all the colours and everything. But from what I could see, it was stunning. I can't wait to get it on 4K. But yeah, awful screening. People in front brought their kid, their 5-year-old, to Mission Impossible. Don't know why, because of course, there'd be him playing up, and there's loads of noise in front. I moved many seats down because there was no one actually on the back row, so I kind of done that, and I enjoyed the most. I got the full experience of the rest of the film, but overall an awful experience. But even then, from what I could actually tell from the cinematography, how many layers this film has in that alone. The editing is some of the best I've ever seen, of the century. The editing is perfection. You can study this film, the way it's been edited together. It's so sharp. It's something else, and such a momentum to every single scene, and the way it just flows. Continuously, constantly, just is on your edge of your seat kind of stuff. Of course, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Mission Impossible 1 as well, they're all like that. But this one just amps that up even further, the way it builds, the way it flows, the way it balances out the drama, the action, set pieces and all that, and the humour as well. What this film is as well, don't expect it to be Ghost Protocol or even Rogue Nation. But, Rogue Nation, that was much more darker, of course, and a lot more... It's hard to explain, but yes, it was a lot more darker, a lot more subtle at times. And, of course it had this big these big set pieces and all that, operatic stuff. But, this got a very, very different tone even to Rogue Nation, but it's similar to that in that sense. It's just much more the other way, going full ahead with that. It's very, very... it's full on, very, very atmospheric. The tone is very particular. It's very intense throughout the whole film, really, and it's got some dark moments in it, and shocking moments. But it still has the great humour that was in Rogue Nation and the others, of course. It just Simon Pegg, of course, he's hilarious in the film. Ving Rhames, of course, again as Luther. He's the best he's ever been, actually. Simon Pegg's just as good, kind of, but I think the character of Luther is better than he's ever been. Rebecca Ferguson, she is better than she's ever been. She's better than Rogue Nation. What they've done with their relationship, her and Tom Cruise's relationship in this, is really something else. They really developed it masterfully. And Alec Baldwin, he's even better than he is in Rogue Nation. I loved him in this film, and it's just so good, it's so enjoyable in this film. And once again, it's got that kind of camaraderie that you have with the team. Of course, a newcomer, Henry Cavill. Now I've reviewed, I think, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I reviewed, and I kind of mentioned so far, personally, I've not been wowed by him. And I don't like Man of Steel. I don't care for his performance. I didn't like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and his kind of performance. But in this film, he's bloody brilliant. Really is something else. I loved him in this film. He plays August Walker. He's kind of from the CIA. He's kind of sent in there to look after, basically, Tom Cruise, look out and oversee the operations, because they can't really be trusted, the IMF, by CIA and stuff. And due to some of their recent kind of failures and mishaps, and yes, basically he teams up. Of course, very, very complex what happens there. I'm not going to get into, but he is amazing in this film. Very likable. Very, very kind of a brute. Very, very physical performance as well. What he does in the action scenes, the fight scenes, is something else. And he's just a beast in this film. The way that he is in these action scenes is really something else. It's amazing. And the kind of the dynamics that him and Tom Cruise have in the film is really amazing. So compelling. Sean Harris is back, of course, as well, as I've said, as Solomon Lane. he's even better than he was in Rogue Nation. I thought Rogue Nation really, in terms of the villain, it was probably the best as well. In terms of the combination of the writing and the performance, and how it goes throughout the film. How it affects the rest of the film, and how he's always kind of there, masterminding things. In this film, very very different what they do, but even better. And his performance, something else. Really amazing. Amazing. Best villain definitely in the franchise for me at this point. And what they do with him is really really unexpected at times. But he's more likable as well. I think he's kind of got that likability more than he was in Rogue Nation. He's less, he's more complex, more layered even than he was in Rogue Nation. And Rebecca Ferguson, again, they do many many different things. They go a different route, but it works perfectly. Quite risky at times what they do, and it just makes for more compelling characters across the board. The action is just amped up to whatever, I don't know how to describe the action. It's so good. It really blows all the other Mission Impossibles out of the park. The physicality of it, how relentless it is, how kind of sustained the action is. It's so operatic and so sophisticated. It really is. It's genius, the action. Especially, I'm really referring, especially to the last half an hour. Really, I could not quite believe what they'd done with this film. Chris McQuarrie, I really wanted to return for the 7th one, but probably won't happen. Tom Cruise likes to bring in different directors. He allowed him to do this one, of course, again, as long as he'd done something different. And yes, he did. And while also, kind of developing a sequel to Rogue Nation. What he was able to do with this film, rarely has it been quite as confident direction in a modern action film. I think, comparisons of all this kind of stuff in Mad Max, I think it's a lot better than Mad Max, and that was already a great film, stunning film. I think this one's better, and just the way it portrays this threat and its nuclear threat is something very very unique. It's through the atmosphere, it's not about, a lot of people miss out on what is actually, what can be done with this kind of plot. But I think the atmosphere and everything that's built up is just stunning, the cinematography. But it's still, it's got this really, really loads of style and kind of grace and charm to it, of course. It's a very, very dark film compared to the other Mission Impossible. And it's very, very... You feel that threat, throughout, and the final act does not disappoint, Wow, Rogue Nation, as I did say, the final act did not disappoint me, but it just wasn't quite as, mind-blowing as the rest of the film. Same with Ghost Protocol. A lot of action films suffer in the final act, or at least they're not quite as good, as the previous acts. This one is it's better than the rest of the film, so it kind of just... What was already one of the greatest masterpieces of action I've seen just got even better in the last half an hour, 45 minutes. There's moments in that helicopter kind of set piece where I would kind of be, wow, I could not believe what I'm seeing. And then, there's certain bits where I'm like, well, if I was making this film, I would have done that as well, Let's just see, maybe, if you put the camera there or you do this kind of thing there. And then it just happened as I was thinking, it'd be good if that happened. It happened, and it constantly kept doing this kind of stuff that is just like, wow, they actually done that. And they shot it like that, and then they followed up with this, and it's just something else, it's kind of just a perfect film, easily, for me, a mind-blowing masterpiece. The score as well and everything like that is stunning. There's so many set pieces in this film that are just so masterfully constructed, but it's just, you've got by far the greatest action and editing of the series and all that, but you've got also the way they just develop the characters far beyond what the franchise ever shown. It's something really to behold. Tom Cruise, wow, he gives the best Mission Impossible performance. I'd still say there's one or two performances that he's probably better. He gives a better performance that aren't action films. There's another one. Born on the 4th of July. It's up there as well. The two ones I'm referring to as his best performances are Magnolia and Eyes Wide Shut. that in particular, yeah, it would still be Eyes Wide Shut. But this is something else, you know. The emotion he brings to it, the subtleties, and you know as well, just the charm. He still has the charm, but it's very, very hard to pull off what he done here. I won't spoil exactly what happens, of course. Some stuff that you just wouldn't believe they'd actually ever do in this, you know, this franchise. And I just think that this is from start to finish a film that I connected to on every level. They also, you know, bring back Michelle Monaghan, and she is amazing in this film. I wasn't really a big fan of her in Free, mainly because of the writing. I don't think her character was well, you know, developed and everything like that. What they do with her for the short time she's in it is amazing as well. I was actually compelled by this, you know, this kind of relationship, and where it went and stuff, and it added loads of different dynamics. But you know what this film does is just it's something else. You know, with all these characters, it's the most emotional for sure. You know, many have compared it. Well, maybe a few just have compared it to saying it's like the Dark Knight of the franchise. And no, it's not as good as the Dark Knight. You know, it would take a lot to get there for me. But it's still an absolutely stunning film, and I get what people say with that. I would probably agree in terms of its tone and its approach, the cinematography as well, and what it does with the blend of the action and the emotion, and the kind of the tragedy of it all at times as well. I think yes, it does. It does remind me of the Dark Knight, for what they've done with that trilogy, and with superhero films in general, just with films in general, you know, modern films. You know, it does remind me of that, and you could say really, you know, of the 2010s, this is probably, yeah, it's a contender for the greatest action film of the 2010s. Actually, you know, it really is, and like the Dark Knight was kind of a contender. It was, you know, of the 2000s. That's how good this film is, you know, and it almost gets into the tier above what I'm going to say. Once again, like Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, I'd have to give this film 100% plus, tier 2. But it is the greatest Mission Impossible film for me. You know, it's definitely above them. It's definitely, you know, it's not far off of tier 1. Now that it's reserved for really some of the finest. Of course, I've got my bonus tier above that, but it's really basically what I'm trying to say, right at the top end of the tier 2s, and it's very, very close to that tier 1. I think it's one of the greatest films of all time, you know. So not quite top 100, but not far off of that, that's what I'll say. I think that it's perfect from start to finish overall, you know, it just does everything right and more. You know, I was spoiled here, you know, for what I didn't... I expected a lot, but I also I was thinking, yeah, let's be a bit more, you know, not let it get my head of myself. You know, it might not automatically be better than the other two best ones, and it was a lot better by the end of it. It's by far the greatest, my favourite, and something that was so emotional, and also so just adrenaline filled, such a level, as I say, of sophistication to the action. You know, it reminds me a lot of classic cinema, you know, this kind of Chaplin even, I would say, and the way the physicality of it. And yeah, it's absolutely stunning, you know. I think it's one of the greatest action films of all time, easily the best Mission Impossible. It's operatic, it's tragic at times, it really is. It just is masterfully directed, shot, edited. You know, the action is mind-blowing to another level. Definitely one of the best action films. I think the characters are some of the best we've seen in action films. They're developed masterfully throughout this film. The way it's written, something else. All the exposition, and just the way it tells the story visually, it is masterful. You know, Chris McQuarrie, well done, really well. I cannot believe how good, how well he directed this film and wrote it. You know, and it's really a shame if he doesn't direct another one. You know, but realistically, he probably won't. That is a shame. You know, I would love to see another one. Maybe even top this one, but you know, it's just so good at directing this film. Unbelievable. I left the cinema thinking just, wow, what a director here, what a writer. And just everyone brings their level, you know, they just bring it all into this film, you know. Stunning film, cannot say much more about it other than you have to see it, you know. And of course, a rewatch if you've not seen them in a while. The rest of the franchise, because it really does make it better experience. And of course, you need to see all the other ones, especially Rogue Nation, because it is actually a follow on from that. But yes, flawless masterpiece, one of the greatest action films of all time, in my opinion. So yes, thanks for watching my review of Mission Impossible Fallout. Yeah, so I watched it yesterday, and today is Saturday, of course. This will be uploaded on Sunday, and I won't be reviewing any films that I watched today because it was just Bronson once again, and I've already reviewed that. So yeah, but the next few days I'll be doing some more of my favourite films of all time, reviews. But this kind of makes it up on the Friday one because it is one of my favourite films, and Bronson is as well. Some of my favourite films list. Sunday, Monday, we could see some Scorsese's, stuff like that. Dance with Wolves once again. Been mentioning that a lot. Yeah, see all this sort of stuff, and yeah. Thanks for watching my review of Chris McQuarrie's absolute masterpiece, Mission Impossible Fallout.